The aesthetic movement began in French universities and intellectual circles in the last decades of the 19th century. It reflected the sense of frustration and uncertainty of the artist, and it reacted against the materialism and the restrictive moral code of the bourgeoisie and its need to redefine the rule of art. Its motto was art for art's sake. The aesthetic artists lived in a very unconventional way. They lived in a bohemian way as a protest against monotony and vulgarity of bourgeois life. Now I will discuss how these new aesthetic theories have influenced the art world. To do this, I will analyze three paintings by three different artists. The first painting is Ecce Ancilla Domini by Dante Gabriel Rossetti. Inspired by the work of early Renaissance artists such as Botticelli and Fra Angelico, Rossetti sought in this work a radical reinterpretation of the Annunciation. Traditionally, the Virgin was depicted in a studious contemplation, reading a missal et après Dieu, but here Rossetti shows her rising from a low bed, as if disturbed from sleep, while the angel Gabriel presents her with a white lily. Both figures are dressed in white, a symbol of the virgin purity, and the angel's rule as the messengers of God is emphasized by the small white dove hovering beside him, signifying the presence of the Holy Spirit. Rossetti used several sitters for his figure, including his brother for the angels and his sister for the Virgin. A companion piece showing the Virgin dead was planned but never begun. This partly explained the tall, narrow shape of the picture, which was intended as a part of a diptych. Rossetti intentionally restricted his palette almost entirely to white and three primaries. The color blue, symbolic of heaven, is traditionally associated with the Virgin, and red symbolizes the blood of Christ. The composition is carefully thought out. The vertical division of space made by the blue hanging and the heads of the bed fall almost on the golden section. The dove and the lily, with one bud still to break, move across this division and are the instrument of conception. Rossetti has written the date March at the bottom of the canvas, perhaps to signify the month in which the Feast of the Immaculate Conception is held. The second painting is Ophelia by John Everett Miller. The source of this painting is Shakespeare's account of the death of Ophelia in Hamlet, Act 4, Scene 7. Ophelia has been driven mad by the murder of her father by her lover Hamlet. Out picking flowers, she slips and falls into a stream. In her grief and madness, she allows herself to drown. Millais spent nearly 4 months, from July to October 1851, painting the background on the bank of the river Oxmill at Ewell in Surrey. He endured considerable difficulties and discomfort, and the whole story of the painting of Ophelia is evidence of the extraordinary dedication of the young pre-Raphaelists to their goal of through to nature. In December, Millais returned with the canvas to London, where he inserted the figure. The model was Elizabeth Siddal, who posed in a bath full of water kept warm by lamps underneath. The lamps once went out, she caught a severe cold, and her father threatened Millais with legal action if he did not pay the doctor bill. The brilliant color and luminosity of Ophelia is the result of the pre-Raphaelist technique of painting in pure colors onto a pure white ground. The picture contains dozens of different plants and flowers, painted with the most painstaking botanic fidelity, and in some cases charged with the symbolic significance. For example, the willow, the nettle growing within its branches, and the daisies near Ophelia's right hand are associated with forsaken love, pain, and innocence. The poppy is a symbol of death. The third painting is The Awakening Conscience by William Holman Hunt. The painting depicts a kept mistress and her lover in a villa in St. John's Wood. A gentleman has installed his mistress, known to be such because of her absence of a wedding ring, in a house for their meetings. Rising from her lover's lap, she gazes into the sunlit garden behind, which is reflected in the mirror behind her. The mirror image represents the woman's lost innocence but redemption, indicated by the ray of light in the foreground, is still possible. Intended to be read, the painting is full of such symbolic elements. The cat toying with the broken winged bird under the table symbolizes the woman's plate. A man discarded glove warns that the likely fate of a cast-off mistress was prostitution. A tangled skein of yarn on the floor symbolizes the web in which the girl is entrapped. Walter Pater is regarded as the theorist of the aesthetic movement in England. The message of his work was potentially demoralizing, decadent, and subversive. He said that art was the only way to stop time, and that life should be lived in the spirit of art, such as a series of intensive experience. The writer's task was to feel sensation, to be attentive to the attractive, the gracious. As a result, art didn't have to refer to life, and therefore it had nothing to do with morality and didn't need to be didactic. A dandy is a man unduly concerned with looking stylish and fashionable. Examples of modern dandies include Andy Warhol, Quentin Crisp, Sebastian Horsley, Grace Jones, Tilda Swinton, and Janelle Monáe. In origin, the word dandy was an abbreviation of the name Andrew. In the years immediately preceding the American Revolution, the first verse and chorus of Yankee Doodle derided the alleged poverty and rough manners of American citizen colonists. The name dandy came to mean someone who dressed extravagantly and was vain about their appearance. The model dandy in British society was George Bryan Brummel. In his early days, an undergraduate student at Oriel College, Oxford, and later an associate of the Prince Regent, Brummel mingled with the aristocracy, becoming known for his gentlemanly manners and ready wit, which kept him out of trouble. He developed an interest in dress, and his elegant bearing earned him the nickname Buck Brummel. Brummel created dandyism as a lifestyle. From England, this trend spread in France, where it was connected to those artistic movements, such as symbolism and aestheticism, which rejected the capitalistic outlook. There are substantial differences between the bohemian and the dandy, because the bohemian is allied with the masses, urban proletariat, and the dandy is a bourgeois artist who remains a member of his class.
Oscar Wilde was born in Dublin in 1854. He studied in Oxford's University, where he distinguished himself for his eccentricity. Finished the studies in Oxford, he moved to London, where he became a famous dandy for his extravagant way of dressing. In 1881, he edited a book called Poems, and he took part for a tour in the United States. During his tour, he explained his idea of aestheticism. Aestheticism is a search of the beautiful, a science through which many men looked for the relationships existing between painting, sculpture, and poetry. Returned to London, he married Constance Lloyd, who gave him 2 children. but after some years he was yet tired of the marriage. His presence became a social event and many people respect him in London. Many peoples, like tribute for dandy aestheticism, started to put lilies in their buttonholes, like him. During the 1880s, he wrote many short stories, like The Canterville Ghost, and a novel, The Picture of Dorian Gray. In a second moment of his best production period, he started to write dramas that became successful on London stages. He also wrote dramas that damaged him, like The Importance of Being Earnest and Salome, considered obscene. In 1891, he met a young nobleman, Lord Alfred Douglas, with whom he had a homosexual relationship. In those years it was illegal, and he was forced to 2 years of hard labor. In prison he wrote De Profundis, a long letter where he explained his life. He lived for some years in France under a pseudonym, and he died of meningitis in Paris in 1900. The Picture of Dorian Gray. The perspective adopted for the novel is internal, and the story is told by an unobtrusive third person. Dorian's apparition is in the second chapter, and this allows a process of identification between the reader and the character. The character reveal themselves through what they say or what other people say of them, with a technique which is typical of drama. The Picture of Dorian Gray. The theme of beauty. The story is a 19th century version of the myth of Faust. In the novel, a picture records the scenes of time under the mask of Dorian Gray's timeless beauty. The picture represents the dark side of Dorian's personality. The moral of the novel is that any excess must be punished and reality cannot be escaped. When Dorian destroys the picture, he cannot avoid the punishment for all his sins, that is death. The horrible picture is a symbol of the middle class, and Dorian and his timeless face are symbols of bourgeoisie hypocrisy. In the end, the picture, restored to his original beauty, illustrates wild theories of art. Art survives peoples. Art is eternal.
The book written by Oscar Wilde is The Picture of Dorian Gray. In particular, I'm going to talk about the second chapter, called I Will Give My Soul. The story is set around 100 years ago in London. The main character is the young and beautiful nobleman Dorian Gray. During the second chapter of the book, he is listening at Lord Henry Wotton's words about youth and its briefness. This conversation worries the young nobleman very much. In fact, his reaction will compromise his entire future. Dorian Gray is a beautiful young nobleman with blonde long hair. Wherever he goes, he charms the world, says Lord Wotton. With the help of his innate beauty, he is in fact totally unconscious of this power. He smiles shyly when people make him compliments, opens his eyes shocked at Wotton's words, and frowns uncertain about them. Worried by the talk with the Lord, his fear is described as a knife that makes each delicate fiber of his nature quiver. This phrase causes to the reader an identification with Dorian, deeply shocked. Something very important in this chapter is how Lord Wotton chose to take care of beauty things. He in fact considers beauty a form of genius, because it is part of the great things of the world, and he thinks the biggest demonstration of beauty is youth, and when your youth goes, your beauty will go with it. Henry Wotton loves youth. He in fact considers it the only thing in life that is really important. Oscar Wilde describes aging as something hideous, repulsive, and he says people must enjoy the beautiful youth because it will fade quickly. Lord Henry Wotton says time is jealous of you and worse your lies and your roses. We can so recognize an important theme for the author, the research of a life of pleasure. During the last part of the chapter, Dorian Gray discovers about his uselessness in front of time,
and this drives him crazy. Jealous because the beautiful picture of himself will never grow old and become horrible and dreadful as he will. The lack of beauty is so something terrible, a pain to the man who comes to give his own soul to stay forever young.